The boutique sat on the corner of a quiet street where glass towers cast long reflections across the pavement, their sharp lines softened by the afternoon light. Inside, the air carried a careful balance of leather, polished wood, and an expensive, almost invisible perfume designed to feel like success rather than smell like it. Ethan cross-stepped through the door with the distracted confidence of a man who owned more buildings than he could remember visiting. His phone was still warm in his palm from a call he'd just ended, numbers and deadlines echoing in his head as the door closed behind him. For a moment, he stood still, letting his eyes adjust. The place was immaculate, suits aligned with military precision, mirrors spotless, lights angled to flatter anyone who dared to look at themselves too closely. This was familiar territory. He had spent years in places like this, measuring his life in tailored fabric and silent nods of approval. He came here to prepare for a charity gala, another appearance that would end with applause, photos, and polite admiration. It was easier to give money than time, easier to smile for cameras than to sit alone with memories. He loosened his shoulders and took a step forward, already rehearsing how quickly he could get in and out. Then he saw her. She emerged from between two racks of suits, a folded jacket resting over her arm. At first, it was only a blur of motion, a figure stepping into his line of sight. Then she lifted her head, and something inside Ethan stopped so abruptly it felt physical, like his heart had slammed into a wall. The world narrowed. Her face was impossibly familiar. Not similar, identical in the way dreams sometimes recreate reality with cruel accuracy. The same dark eyes that once studied him across candlelit dinners. The same soft curve of her lips, as if a smile was always waiting just beneath the surface. Even the way she held herself, relaxed yet guarded, struck a chord so deep it sent a wave of heat through his chest. For a fraction of a second, time folded in on itself. The boutique dissolved, replaced by the small apartment he used to call home. He could almost smell burned coffee and hear laughter bouncing off peeling walls. He saw Lily standing barefoot on cold tiles, wearing one of his old shirts, rolling her eyes at something he'd said too seriously. He felt the ache of that easy closeness, the kind that didn't need effort because it was built from shared mornings and quiet nights. His breath caught. The woman in front of him blinked, confusion flickering across her face as she took in the way he stared. Her fingers tightened slightly around the jacket, a subtle reaction that only deepened the resemblance. Lily used to do that too when she sensed tension, when she wasn't sure what was coming next. "Sir," she said, gently, uncertain. The sound of her voice shattered the illusion. It was close, but not the same, lighter, less familiar, missing the cadence he knew by heart. The boutique rushed back into focus, lights glaring, music humming softly from hidden speakers. Ethan realized he hadn't moved, hadn't breathed properly in several seconds. His mouth felt dry. He cleared his throat, forcing air into his lungs. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stare." She offered a polite, professional smile, though her eyes searched his face for an explanation. "That's all right." He tried to look away and failed. The resemblance was relentless. The same tiny scar near the eyebrow, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. The same tilt of the head, as if she were constantly weighing the world before responding to it. "You look exactly like someone I used to know," he said finally, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Something softened in her expression, not discomfort but understanding. "That happens more than you'd think," she replied. "I'm Anna." "Ethan," he said automatically, his voice quieter than usual. He didn't add his last name. For once, he didn't want it to matter. She shifted the jacket over her arm and gestured toward the displays. "Are you shopping for something specific?" "A suit," he answered, though his mind was elsewhere. "For an event." She nodded and led the way deeper into the boutique. As she walked, Ethan found himself noticing every small detail he shouldn't have been noticing. The way her hair moved against her shoulders, the rhythm of her steps, the way she paused briefly before turning, as if making sure he was still there. Each movement tugged at a memory he'd tried for years to bury under achievements and acquisitions. She stopped in front of a row of dark suits, speaking confidently about fabrics and cuts. Ethan listened, but her words blended with the echo of another voice from another time. Lily had once teased him about how seriously he took clothes, how he believed a better suit could somehow protect him from failure. He'd laugh then, brushing it off, too busy planning his next move to see how often she'd been trying to tell him something else. Anna held up a jacket, waiting for his opinion. He stared at it without really seeing it. "Do you want to try this one?" she asked. "Yes," he said, too quickly. Anything to keep moving, to avoid standing still with the weight of recognition pressing down on him. She handed it to him, and as their fingers brushed, a jolt shot through him. It was nothing, just skin against skin, but his body reacted as if he'd touched something forbidden. He pulled his hand back, startled by his own response. "I'll be right here," she said, unaware of the storm she'd stirred. Ethan turned toward the fitting room, the jacket draped over his arm like an anchor. Inside the narrow space, he leaned one hand against the mirror, staring at his reflection. He looked composed, powerful, every inch the man magazines loved to photograph. But his eyes told a different story. They looked haunted. He remembered the last night Lily had waited up for him, sitting on the couch long after midnight. He'd come home talking about a deal, exhilarated, barely noticing her silence. When she finally spoke, her voice had been calm, almost resigned. She said she felt invisible. He'd promised things would change. He always did. They never had. He slipped the jacket on mechanically, barely noticing the fit. Outside, he could hear Anna shifting, straightening a rack, humming softly to herself. The sound grounded him, reminding him that she wasn't Lily, that the past couldn't simply walk back into his life wearing a name tag. And yet, when he stepped out of the fitting room and met her eyes again, the feeling returned, less shocking this time, but deeper, heavier. He realized with a quiet, aching clarity that he had never truly faced what he'd lost. He had just kept moving forward fast enough to outrun it. Now, standing in a quiet boutique with a stranger who looked like a ghost from his past, he felt the full weight of it at last. Ethan stepped out of the fitting room and adjusted the jacket over his shoulders, feeling the smooth fabric settle perfectly. On paper, it was flawless, the cut, the color, the way it clung to his frame. But none of that mattered. The boutique around him seemed muted, reduced to a soft blur as his gaze locked on Anna. She stood a few feet away, her hands folded in front of her, watching him with quiet attentiveness. There was no trace of judgment in her expression, only a calm patience that contrasted sharply with the chaos of memories spinning inside his mind. "It fits well," she said finally, her voice steady. But then she hesitated, as if reading something unspoken in his posture. "But, are you okay?" Her words were gentle, careful. For a moment, he wanted to brush them off, to retreat behind the familiar armor of his success. But he couldn't. Something in her presence demanded honesty. He could feel it in the way she held herself, the soft tilt of her head, the quiet interest that wasn't intrusive but somehow grounding. "I didn't expect today to be difficult," he admitted, the words tasting strange as they left his mouth. He tried to force a casual tone, but it came out brittle, fragile. Anna tilted her head slightly, as if inviting him to continue. The gesture was subtle, but it was enough to unravel him further. He had spent years avoiding this, the ache of what he had lost, the regrets that he had neatly tucked into boardrooms and skyscrapers, but here it was, unavoidable, staring back at him through a woman who wasn't her but somehow was. "My ex-wife," he said quietly, almost ashamed of the confession. "You look just like her." It caught me off guard. Her eyes softened. She didn't flinch, didn't look away, didn't offer any hollow reassurance. She simply nodded, acknowledging the weight of what he had said. "That must be strange," she said. "Painful, too, I imagine." He gave a bitter, humorless laugh. "I thought I was past it. I thought I had moved on. But seeing you, it's like a wall I thought I'd built around the past suddenly collapsed." His voice cracked slightly, and he ran a hand over his face, trying to compose himself. Anna stepped a little closer, not imposing, but offering a presence that was grounding, like a steady rock in turbulent water. "Sometimes moving on doesn't mean forgetting," she said softly. "It means accepting that what hurt us is still part of our story, and choosing what to do with it now." Her words struck him deeper than he expected. He had built walls, signed contracts, and closed doors to avoid feeling this exact ache. And now, here it was, standing before him in the form of a woman who shared the same curve of a smile, the same way of tilting her head, the same warmth he hadn't realized he'd missed. I'm sorry," he said, almost reflexively. "I shouldn't be putting this on you. You didn't do anything." Anna shook her head. "No, you're not. You're just being honest." She paused, studying him with a quiet empathy that made him uncomfortable and grateful at the same time. "Sometimes it's better to face it than to run from it." He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. It had been so long since he'd truly faced anything. Not his failures, not his mistakes, not the loss that had quietly followed him into every decision he had ever made. He realized now that success, money, and power had only been distractions, tools to fill a space that nothing else could. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a moment, his voice tentative. Of course, she replied. If someone realizes too late that they lost something important, do you think it's possible to become better because of it? His eyes met hers, searching for an answer he could believe in. Anna considered him carefully, her expression thoughtful, her hands still folded loosely. Yes, she said finally. But only if they stop trying to replace what they lost, and start learning from it. Growth comes from understanding the past without letting it define the future. He exhaled slowly, feeling a strange clarity begin to settle in his chest. For the first time in years, he understood that he didn't have to mourn endlessly or cling to guilt. The past had shaped him, yes, but it didn't have to control him. He had a choice. Anna handed him a folded receipt and a neatly packaged bag. He realized he was smiling faintly, not because of the suit, but because of the encounter. It had given him something far more valuable than any garment. He had been reminded of his own humanity, of the fragile yet resilient heart that he had spent so long hiding beneath ambition and wealth. As he reached the door, he paused. "Thank you, Anna," he said quietly. She tilted her head, a small smile touching her lips. "For the suit," he shook his head, the smile growing. "For reminding me that I'm still human, that I can feel and reflect and learn, even after everything." She gave him a small, warm nod. "I'm glad," she said. "Take care, Ethan." He stepped back into the cold city air, the world bracing him with its usual rush of noise and movement. But something had changed. The weight he had carried for years seemed lighter, shifted, as if acknowledging the past didn't mean surrendering to it. Inside the boutique, Anna watched him leave, unaware that her calm, steady presence had given a man a rare gift, the chance to confront his own history without being trapped by it. Walking down the street, Ethan felt the wind on his face, brisk and sharp, and for the first time in years, he felt present. The city, with its constant rush and pressure, no longer seemed like a cage but like a challenge he could finally meet honestly. He realized he had spent decades chasing approval, chasing the illusion of control, when what he truly needed was to face himself. As the boutique disappeared behind him, he made a silent promise, to honor what he had learned today, to be more present, and to never allow a memory of love lost to make him forget the life still waiting ahead. It was not about replacement, he understood now, but recognition that he had survived, that he could grow, and that the past, however haunting, could serve as a guide rather than a chain. By the time he hailed a cab, the weight in his chest had shifted entirely. There was no relief, no finality, just clarity, the kind that comes from facing your own humanity, from confronting regret without being consumed by it. Anna had been a mirror, yes, but also a window, and he stepped forward ready to meet the world outside with eyes wide open for the first time in years. Even as the city sped past him in a blur of lights and movement, Ethan knew he would never forget that boutique, that suit, or that woman who looked like someone he had loved and lost. Not because she was her, but because she reminded him that it was possible to confront the past, to feel, and to move forward without fear. And for the first time in a long time, he felt ready.